We're here with Velocity Solar with Brad Ott, and Brad has been in the industry for over 15 years, so it's seeing it come and go, and we're now moving towards more batteries, etc. So let's get right into it and find out all the good and the horror stories of solar and batteries. Welcome to the podcast, Brad.
Thank you very much.
Now, you've been started Velocity Solar, or did you buy the company? How did it all start?
Yeah, so back in the day, I was a electrician by trade, so running my own business. I was wiring up brand new houses. That's what I did for my apprenticeships. That was my backstory. And for me, it was all about just learning something different. So I remember going back to my original boss and just saying, hey, look, I want to do a solar course. Are you interested in us doing solar and then maybe me being able to do the course? And he's gone, no, I'm not interested in that. I'm too old for that. So if you want to go do it, you just got to go do it yourself. So I just took a couple of days off, went and did the course, paid for the course. And then within the first 3 months, I already had 2 clients that came from his clients. But obviously, as I did it in my own time, I was able to start that process. So we went down that process. That's what got me involved in solar. Had a industry sort of guru in the back end in Geelong. So Phil Hapgood from Radiant Energy Systems. He's been doing off-grid and he's been in the solar industry for about 25 years. So 10 years before me, doing heat pumps and off-grid solar. So that was my starting point. He got me interested in solar in the first place. And then we said, well, look, if we're going to do solar, I may as well put it on my own house first and see how it goes. So did it on my own install. It was quite good. Quite enjoyed it, and it gave me the ability to sort of earn some extra income while still working for my boss at that time.
So you started basically on the side with solar, and then obviously that got bigger and bigger.
Yeah, the catalyst was when my son was old enough, started to interact more. I'm like, well, I can't keep doing 60 hours a week. So I ended up working for myself a couple of days, subbing back to my boss for a few days, and then just slowly grew it, just organically. That's the way we've ran our business for the last 12, 13 years that Velocity Solar's been going, but 15 years I've been in business. It's just organic growth. We don't go looking for leads, they sort of come to us.
Now, what's the philosophy that you guys apply to the company? I mean, you seems to be quite conscious there's a bit of passion there. So what's your philosophy about Velocity? What do you want to do for the customer?
Yeah, well, look, when I originally started Velocity Solar, the reason I actually enjoyed it and I got interested in solar was because of the financial benefits. So with solar, you've obviously got the financial and the environmental side of things. For me, it was more the financial. I could see how good of an asset it was and that it was obviously going to give good return of investment for the clients. Now, over the years, we've had many a salesperson, and some of them are more focused towards the environmental and some are still focused more towards the financial benefits for clients. There is no right and wrong. The benefit of this industry is both of them work side by side perfectly. So that's where we sort of came along.
When you get new staff, how do you explain what Velocity is all about, like what they should carry in their heart?
Yeah, so from a values perspective and what we're trying to achieve, it's actually sort of more about educating both the client and the actual workers. So it's not just about the client, it's also about the actual individual workers. So we want to make sure that every employee that comes through our business leaves a better version of themselves. So for the apprentices, that's going to mean not just their A grade, but we also pay for them to complete their solar accreditation on top. For the sales team, there's additional training. For the admin, we do what we can to add the extra benefit. So it's a holistic approach. It's not just about the client. It's also about our employees, because at the end of the day, the better educated our employees are, the better the service that we can actually offer.
And I mean, also happy employees tend to treat clients very well, don't they?
100%. Yeah, it's not really noted and something that people talk about, but running a business for as long as I have, you definitely see that the right crew will get a much better job done and quicker as well. So it works, 2 or 3-fold. So for us,
I mean, in businesses as general, a lot of people underestimate really how much staff contribute to the business. So how do you pick your staff?
We're a little bit different from the upper end side of things. Obviously, it's a standard sort of process of making sure that you've got the right people in the right places. We've been lucky enough that we've had the same sales team and operations manager now for multiple years. And their dedication towards the solar industry aligns perfectly with our values and principles. So that's the main thing, is making sure you've got people that align with your values, your principles, and what you're trying to achieve.
But what values are they?
So for us, it's championship team, which is, just to clarify, slightly different to a normal team, which is that we're actually still striving to win. We're not just there to have fun at like a Friday night basketball team. It's more about actually communicating as a team. So no silos. In most businesses that I've seen, the office admin versus the installers, there's always sort of that segregation. That's us versus them. And that's just holistically across businesses in general. We've sort of worked towards making sure that doesn't exist.
And what does that do to the customer? Does it mean it's a better communication process?
100%. So it's no different to what you mentioned with the employees. If you've got a team that works together, then obviously the communication is going to filter right through. So it starts at the top and obviously ends up down the bottom. We've also got, as I said, continual learning. So for us, it's about continual learning at always. So for us, it's not just I come to work and do my job. It's what can I also learn this week? How do I get better at what I'm doing? How do I, strive to become that A grade and that Clean Energy Council or SAA, Solar Australia, sort of accreditation, so that we can tick those boxes sooner rather than later.
But would you also encourage people, let's say if I'm an apprentice and I actually found something that makes it a bit more efficient and all that I share that as well? Do you encourage that?
Yeah, well, the good news is the more people you've got to learn from, the better the set of skills that you're going to end up with. So obviously I've gone right through the ranks. I was an apprentice myself, and then I was teaching people. I've sort of moved out of that role now. We have a dedicated install representative that sort of looks after that side of things. But we're more than happy to onboard and to employ people that come from different places, different employees, purely because it gives us the ability to learn extra skills and extra knowledge. Like if you're just learning from the same person over and over, you're only ever going to learn one way to do things. If you've got multiple people from different backgrounds and different, so that could be, commercial, industrial, it could be running cables, it could be anything. So we've had approximately 40 or 50 people, probably about 30 to 40 apprentices that have come through over the 15 years that I've been running a business, and a high success rate of those who actually complete their apprenticeship. So nearly everyone that starts with us will actually go through to complete their apprenticeship.
So if I actually end up as an internship or as an apprentice with Velocity Solar, then I'm actually going to possibly be quite successful in the solar industry.
Well, that's what we focus on. Obviously you've got different business models. For us, we know what we're good at. And for us, it is that sort of domestic sort of area. Yes, we play around with the commercial, and occasionally as required, we'll assist people in industrial side of things. But for us, our key strength is our domestic side of things.
Right.
Whether it's, everything from off-grid to EVs to heat pumps to solar, with batteries. It's the whole lot, but it's really on more of a domestic space. So for us, one of our motto is to, change the way that people consume and generate power, at the same time educating. So for us, it's not just selling a solar system to the end user. It's also about giving them the information so that they can make informed decisions on whether solar is or isn't the right option for them.
Right, so you're not just selling the car, you teach them how to drive.
Pretty well. And at the end of the day, I remember conversations where I spoke to clients 7 years ago and they just said, when should I install a battery? I'm like, come back to me in 24 months. So they came back to me in 24 months and they said, is it time yet? And I said, nah, come back in another 12. Come back in another 12. We're now finally, so these are my existing clients from, might have installed a solar system 10 years ago. They keep coming back. They keep asking questions. We also keep them up to date via email and our marketing. But it's now sort of at that time where a battery does make sense. And if you add the financial benefit from the government, then it's becoming more and more viable each day.
So that's interesting because, there are a lot of guys who run a business, who've got the bills to pay, and if a customer asks, should I buy the product, they will always say yes, but you didn't.
Well, at the end of the, I went into business and I assumed that once I sold a solar system to a client, you're never going to see them again because they only ever need one solar system. So what you do find though, after being in business for as long as I have, those clients will come back to you. If you do the right thing by your clients, they will automatically come back to you, and then they'll bring a friend, and then they'll bring another friend. So for us, we find that around about 40% of our clients come from referrals. So we don't go looking for leads. We don't pay for leads. We rely on our brand name, our reputation, and our service to serve as well.
Got it. How do you determine what product you actually want to recommend to customers?
It's an interesting one. We sort of use the industry sort of best practice. We speak to a lot of companies. So it's not just a matter of we just pick what we think is best. We sort of have an industry of people in the industry, so solar professionals that we can actually call on, ask. We sort of get an idea on what the fault rates are, whether they're reliable, what the backstory is. So it's not, and we go to solar conferences twice a year. So we're going to know, and we stay up to date with what is coming and what is going to be available in the next few months. And then we sort of just go into the backstory. So it's not a matter of just simply picking a battery or an inverter and just saying, here we are, we're all good. But at the same time, we can use experience that we've also got. Like I've had a Trina solar system on my house with an SMA inverter. That was 15 years ago when I installed my first system. The inverter still works perfectly fine, and there's not too many inverters out there that are still working 14, 15 years after they were installed going back then. Obviously, inverters are better now, but they weren't back then.
But you possibly also installed it in the right spot, not in the sun.
Not in the sun? Yeah, well, that's, it's a pretty clear one for those that know what they're doing. Two places you try not to put them, north side of the house and the front of someone's house, because they don't usually like the appearance of them. But that's not rocket science. But at the same time, obviously, we've seen many an inverter on a north side of the roof.
I've seen them cooked away.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a customer, he's got his solar system installed, something unexpected happens and he rings you up. What's your normal process?
We actually have a dedicated maintenance team and after sales. So we actually have someone dedicated in that space to make sure that we handle that inquiry. We have a sort of a rule at our business, which is that clients won't contact us. They won't ever have a need to contact us because we'll be communicating clearly enough that they shouldn't. So if a client actually comes to us, so let's say you're the client and you've got a concern, if you have to ring us after that first initial conversation, then we haven't done our job properly. So for us, we strive towards giving you the right level of communication, not every day to annoy you, but just keep you up to scratch with what's going on, whether we're coming out to do it, to have a look at it, whether it's under warranty, how long the process is taking. And it just makes your life a lot easier that you don't have to follow up on it.
But let's say I had a local blackout and then afterwards there was lightning and all sorts of stuff, and now my inverter doesn't come back on again.
Yep.
In that case, I would ring you, wouldn't I?
100%. We have someone that's able to come out and do a call out. So once again, we have a KPI that we're trying to meet to get out to that site as soon as possible. We appreciate that if someone's asset's not working, then they need it to be up and running. So for us, we sort of prioritise those that already have those assets because we believe in it, not just today, but that solar system should run for 10, 25 years. So you want to make sure it's working as best as possible and get it back up and running as soon as possible.
Now, let's say I'm interested to utilise Velocity Solar for a solar and battery system. What's involved? Are you guys going to be in my house for a week, or can you explain the process?
Well, it used to be under a day and you'd be able to finish a solar system from start to scratch. But that was going back a long time ago. And you probably only needed 2 people to run the cables back when I originally was doing 3, 4, 5 kilowatt systems. So regulations have got a lot tighter. Solar systems are a lot safer. But in saying that, that obviously adds a lot of cost, time to the job. So for us, we usually factor in a standard solar installation to take a day. But if it does require more, we allocate the right amount of people to that job to make sure that we're getting it done in a nice time frame. But you don't want to be putting 8 people onto a job and trying to do it in a day because you'll get in each other's way. So we do find that the larger systems with batteries might take 2 to 3 days to install, but we're also setting up edge protection most of the time on every job. Might even put extra edge protection and scaffolding on a double story. So we're more about making sure that the job gets done properly rather than worrying too much about whether the job takes a little bit of extra time.
And safely, of course, too, with the edge protection.
Well, we already know in principle that from speaking to other people in the industry that we're probably we take about 20 to 25% longer to do an install than other jobs. But I don't mind that. Like financially, obviously it makes more sense to get a job done quicker and to go to the other one, but we're not going to take shortcuts on the way through. So that's the difference between having your own installers rather than subcontractors. You get to keep the quality control exactly where you want it.
Let's say I go to Velocity Solar and I say I need solar and battery. How do you know what size solar and battery I should get?
Cool. So when we're talking about the size of the system, you've got to appreciate that I was an A-grade electrician, then I was a solar installer, then I was a salesperson, because if I didn't go out and find work, I wouldn't have any work. Now I run the business, but at the same time, from time to time, I still enjoy being on the job sites and doing some work. I still enjoy doing sales and speaking to customers. So I'm still 100% involved in bits and pieces of the business as we choose to, and more than happy to speak to clients. And we actually have a pricing tool that I've got on the website that actually has gathered that 15 years of knowledge that I've got in the industry and been able to put together a clear and precise design structure that actually allows you to answer specific questions, whether it's the sizing, the quality, the inverter and the panels that you want, whether you're interested in batteries, how you're going to consume the power, are you going to be home or are you not going to be home to use it? And
so you're setting a whole set of questions to me?
100%. So you can sit here right now and I can sell you a system one-to-one by asking you a whole stack of questions, but you can also go home later on tonight and just jump on the website and complete a free, no obligation pricing tool. We're not even forcing people to put their email and their phone numbers in. It's just a tool that's sitting there available so that you can get not only the design specifications that you want, but you can also get a pretty realistic price expectation at the same time. So nowhere online that I've ever seen will you actually be able to get a design and a price relative to your specific needs. Not just this cookie cutter, they're all the same size, X, Y, and Z. It's like using my 15 years of knowledge all catalysed together in an actual one app sitting on our website that just allows you to just say, okay, well, I'm going to pretend Brad's here because I've built the algorithm, and you can just answer the questions. And I'm going to tell you the exact same, virtually the exact same products here right now speaking to you, or online via a computer. And I'm not available all day, so why not automate that process and give people the ability?
But why wouldn't you put the demand before you release the data? Why wouldn't you put the demand that they have to give your phone number and your email address like everybody else does? Do you just trust the name of Velocity that eventually they find their way to your door?
Well, at the end of the day, when people are interested, they reach out to us.
Right.
We don't cold call people. We don't go looking for the work.
No door knockers working for you?
Not at all. Well, you're not actually allowed, as you quite well know. That's been theoretically outlawed for a long time.
I think only in Victoria, by the way.
Only in Victoria?
Yeah.
Okay.
New South Wales, you're still allowed to door knock, by the way. So I think it's the right thing to stop it.
It is, but those regulations, and also you can't call people directly as well. You can't get a phone call and actually call people that aren't interested as well. But that only applies to people that are following the rules. Right. And there is loopholes around that allow people to go around the backside. But at the end of the day, if you're interested in solar and you want us to talk to you, then we can. But one of our goals was to make sure that we can educate as many people as possible. So if I make this available, you can be sitting in Queensland if you really want to find the app. You can be in Queensland and fill it in. It's not going to be 100% accurate to your region because of rebates or this or this, but it just means that it's available to everybody.
Got it.
Why not offer something that's got value to as many people as possible to benefit as many people as possible?
No, that's a
and the ones that are relevant that want to come to us, they will.
Now, my roof is very higgledy-pickledy. I don't know what happened when the builder built it, but it's got a lot of ridges and little gables, and then I got a big tree. If I have shady roofs, can I still have solar?
You definitely can. Multiple different manufacturers now have different requirements, and they now have different ways of selling the benefits of their tools. So the most common one is N-phase microinverters. They've been pretty well top of the range for a lot of years now. Most of them are made in America, and it just means that every individual panel works independently. So if you do have shading on a couple of panels, it's not going to have an issue on the entire installation. But what we're finding now is if it's light shading, you've also got options now with the actual manufacturing of the cells themselves and the actual inverters. There's plenty of white sheets out there that you can go looking at that just mean that the adverse effect of shading now is much more insignificant than what it used to be in the future. So don't get me wrong, there's been sites where I've turned around and said, look, we can install solar on your house, but financially you're not going to get the return of investment that someone else is. So we actually virtually have a solution for everything. Like even in Victoria and Geelong, we've got roofs that are tiled terracotta. And they're not the best because they crumble, they break, X, Y, and Z. And we've got our competitors that are giving us those leads because they don't want to service them. So for us, we don't have a problem. We'll service any installation that we can find. We've even done a slate roof, not planning on doing another one anytime soon. But we pride ourselves on offering the solution for the client. Now, if the cost is a little bit more expensive, the cost is going to be a little bit more expensive. But for us, it's being able to offer something to somebody that wants it that otherwise will be told, sorry, we're not willing to do that.
Right. So you're basically there with the client and leading them through.
Yeah, and there's no one size fits all. So we do need to make sure that we're actually going to site. Like we also won't do a solar install without doing a site inspection. So you're not going to have, we pride ourselves on the service. So you're not going to get a company from Melbourne that's quoting against us that has gone to site. And it only just happened very recently. We went to a client and he's gone, this person offered this, this and this. And I said, have they looked at the plans? Because we can actually scale the plans online, but then we can also look on site. And when you looked at site, you're like, okay, well, they can fit 16 panels. I'm like, yeah, but they can't. Legally, they can only fit 13. So if you don't do that site inspection, you don't offer that extra level of service, you're going to be sold a system at a cheaper price today. But when you come to install it, they're going to have to say, no, we can't do it. Or, who knows what they're going to actually offer as a solution. But it definitely won't be the right one. So better to make sure that you've got the system designed correctly today rather than worry about it in the future.
So if I go with Velocity Solar, I get a guaranteed site inspection, I get a bespoke solution, I get in-house staff, not subbies, that want to run in and run out. But you must lose some jobs sometimes to some really cheap Melbourne company that just fly in and fly out.
Yeah, well, what you've also forgot there is our after service.
Right.
So we offer something that I don't know of anyone else that's doing it. I hope that someone else is doing it. But for the last 4.5 years, we've set out reminders and we've gone to every existing client's job that's come back to us. We've gone to every single one of those jobs and checked over it in person. So we're now finding that it's just as easy and you can actually get better data online. But every single one of our clients, we will go back to a year later. We're also sending reminders for those that have batteries so they can do blackout protection. We're also doing energy comparisons for our clients. So we'll actually do up a document every 6 months for those clients and actually say, hey, here's the comparison in the market. So our after sales is also something that
That's one of the best I've ever heard of, and I'm not making it up, because you're basically having a marriage with that system. Normally people install and do a runner, but you're actually staying with that customer and making sure he gets the maximum output.
Yeah, well, this is what I said from day one as to one of the reasons that I believe is solar as an asset. And the asset's not the day that you install it. The asset's over the life of the system. So if that life's going to exist for a long time, then obviously you want to make sure that they're getting that financial benefit for a long time.
But with all your care that you take on that system, you could easily possibly extend the life of the system by 5 to 10 years, meaning they get an extra 25 grand from your care.
Yeah, well, it's really hard to train an industry that proactive maintenance is better than reactive maintenance. So it is very hard to do so. I've gone down that path of trying to create a business that actually did proactively do that. And we still have that. We just have a dedicated team and we brought it back in-house. But that's the concern with the industry as a whole, is it's really hard to convince people to be proactive with their maintenance rather than retrospectively. And if you check a system and you can pick up that there's a loose terminal or there's water getting in it, might only cost $150 for a call out, but you're saving $1,500 or more for a possible fire on the roof.
I mean, I knew a guy, they installed his system, there was no monitoring, never gave it to him, and then he had the bill for $800 3 months later because the system had never been properly turned on.
Yep, we see that plenty of times. And I think every year we probably get 3 or 4 phone calls from what we call orphan systems, which means that the job was turned on. They're theoretically saving money, but Powercore never knew about it because no one ever lodged the paperwork. And we actually get probably 3 or 4 of those every single year. And this is still 5 or 6 years after the fact.
So they've been basically thinking they got solar for all these years and actually never got the benefit.
Well, they could have been getting the feed-in tariff from the clients.
Yes.
They could have been saving a lot more money. There's clients that have lost, $5,000 or $6,000 because they were never connected to the grid because no one ever told them anything different. So that's the process that was. Obviously, the Victorian government's put things in place to make that a lot better than it used to be. But unfortunately, there's still jobs that fall through the cracks or companies that install it that don't exist 3 to 4 months later. We only had one recently with a battery that we went to go and have a look at the client. He's going, I don't know if my battery works. I said, well, I'll come over and have a look. Had a look at it and the system had never been connected to the grid. So they don't know whether the actual system was working. Then goes and speaks to the client. The client says, well, we're not local, so...
You mean talk to the installation company?
Yeah. So they weren't even Victorian-based. So were they actually going to come back and help? No, they weren't going to do anything. So we ended up having to work with that client to find a solution to get them connected to the grid so that they meet all the requirements. So we do a lot of that work and that's something that, once again, we pride ourselves on, is being able to offer that after-sales service, and we are easily number one in that space in Geelong.
Look, I mean, I have to say to end customers, one lesson over the last 20 years, you buy cheap solar or a cheap battery, they cut the after-sales service out. You inevitably one day will have a question, maybe after a big hailstorm or whatever, and there's nobody there to help you. Then they actually have to come to you and beg you to help them out. And sometimes actually those systems are beyond repair.
Yeah, well, you might know the numbers slightly better than me, but my understanding is that 90% of solar installation companies that were installed 5 to 10 years ago don't exist.
No, we've got about 850 that all installed, cheap stuff, close their door 5-6 years later when the gear dies because they don't want to know about it. And often a particular company with a slightly different name pops up in the same premises.
Yeah, well, we all know the sporting heroes that jump onto some of those ads that we see every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And look, unfortunately, that's the way some of the larger companies go, and they're just limiting their losses and liabilities for their warranties and just starting all over again. It's unfortunate, but I think every industry's got those, and that's why we always suggest and likewise, like we'll be speaking to a client and we just say, hey, have you had any other quotes? And they said, yeah, we've got one. I said, local or regional? And if it's a local quote, we're pretty confident that that company will be offering a reasonable solution. If it's someone from down the road, closer to Melbourne, coming down to Geelong, we can't guarantee that level of service and reliability is there.
No, they're not. I tell you now, I've seen it. They don't come back.
Yeah, I was being nice.
They're just you ring them and they'll give you any excuse under the door to not have to come back because there's no money in it. That system is sold, they got their money and they're going to do a runner. And if any customer believes different, they've got a better chance in the Star Casino to win the lotto.
Yeah, and that's why there's 3 or 4 companies in Geelong that have been around for 13 to 15 years because it's a small place. It's big enough, but it's also small enough, and everybody knows what to expect. And people around Geelong talk. They talk to each other, and that's why we are where we sit, where people come to us and we get so much word of mouth and referrals because we've done the right thing over all the years to be able to be in a position that we are the most trusted. That is it's on our logo, Geelong's most trusted solar company, and we honestly believe in that.
Now, Brad, I hear you're quite passionate about off-grid. Tell me a bit about the service that I can get from Velocity Solar if I move into the off-grid space.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, my original mentor was in the off-grid space, so I've done a lot of installations over all the years, and products have changed quite a lot over all the years. But one thing that doesn't change is if you're going to offer somebody a solar system and it's going to be off-grid, you by default become the equivalent of the distributor. You are the person supplying them with the power, and it's your responsibility to keep them connected to power all day, every day. So it reminds me of a time where unfortunately one of the manufacturer's inverters stopped working and it was Boxing Day. So on Boxing Day, we had someone go out to site and recalibrate, bypass as we needed to get his generator up and working and actually get him power supplied again. That's just part and parcel of if you're going to do the job, you've got to do it properly. But it becomes a no-brainer for us to definitely help people to go off grid now when the distributors are charging somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 to put poles and wires in. So the costs have just got ridiculous now for some of these rural properties in getting power connected. And we know that we can offer a good solution, whether it be Selectronic or SIG. They're both really top of the range inverters. And both of those are going to be able to give that person that constant supply guaranteed for the next ongoing years. So we've got a lot in that space, and it's just being able to once again offer a solution that otherwise wouldn't be available.
If I bought a block and now I get $100,000 quote for putting the power in, is the off-grid going to be $100,000 too?
Yeah, well, this is where it's becoming more and more viable, and we're actually seeing people even closer to towns, to metropolitan areas, still going for it, because the cost of an off-grid system, depending on the size of the system, might range between $40,000 and $60,000, maybe a little bit more if you want to go for a Selectronic inverter. But the range means that you're saving money from day one, and you don't have the ongoing costs. So it does become a no-brainer if you can install a off-grid solar system cheaper than you can get the power connected, because you've got the guarantee reliability of your own system. You still have a backup generator most of the time. We always recommend that people have an automatic generator that turns on, but we've got clients that, although we recommend it, they haven't had to use it because we're designing the system to suit their needs correctly from day one.
With the right size so that they don't run out. Yeah. But are they kind of like the golden 5 rules of an off-grid system?
Golden 5 rules.
Or 6 or 3 or whatever. I walk in, I say off-grid. What's important? I mean, I suppose sizing it the right way, using good gear is probably important. So what are the kind of important bits of off-grid?
Well, the first thing you need to know is that system that you're installing is your livelihood. It is your connection to grid, to power, full stop. So obviously you want to make sure that whatever you're installing has the reliability and the sort of the branding behind it, that you know that you're going to have the best reputation that goes with those inverters, and that you're going to have no faults. Now, we can't categorically tell you that no system will have any faults, but the good quality gear will have a complete different set of concerns. So we've seen lower end off-grid inverters. Now, we haven't installed them because we choose not to, but we know clients where we'll go back to them and they've installed X or they've installed Y. I don't need to go into the brands, but they were priced accordingly, and then that client doesn't have power for a week. And you definitely don't want to be sitting there in that space. The second part with the off-grid is, once again, you want to make sure that whoever is installing it is going to back up the guarantee for you, because they become your power supply. So you don't want to go with a company up in Queensland when you're in Victoria, because you're not going to get that support you need for someone to come out to site.
But they're $500 cheaper.
500? They might even be cheaper than that.
5,000, you mean?
Yeah. So you've just got to know that you've got to have trust that that person that's installing your system is going to look after you. And if they have trust in that Queensland company at $5,000 cheaper, then so be it.
But they're never going to come to Victoria to fix it, are they?
No, they're most likely not.
So what, they're going to send you a kit, or what's the story?
No, most of the time, well, to be honest, we might even get a phone call. So we might lose the job to someone that's $5,000 cheaper, and then they might come down to us and say, "Oh, you've got an off-grid accreditation. Can you come and fix this for us?" So, and look, we still will, because that's the sort of company that we are.
Right,
okay?
right.
But we know that there's a service and quality of our service, so we don't need to compete every day on making sure that we're the cheapest sort of in the market. If we were, then we wouldn't be able to do the same level of service that we're doing. So there's a niche market for everybody out there, but we prefer to stay in the reputable side of things. And as I said, we're backing up our products for the next 7, 10, the years of those systems. So we're not going to install something that we wouldn't install on our own house, because we don't want to go back there any more regularly than the next person.
You would have seen a lot of development in off-grid, both in the inverter solutions as well as the batteries. What product do you use, and what development has there been?
Yeah, I've been in it long enough to know that there was the old school lead acid batteries, which you couldn't even pick up. They weighed around about 40, 60 kilos each, and they took up half of the space of a garden shed. And yeah, that side of things has good for us changed. Obviously, it's now gone a lot more towards lithium. Less maintenance, a little bit of extra cost, but for the size now, the technology's got so much more advanced that what used to take up 3 or 4 square metres can now only take up, less than 1 metre. So definitely a lot more advanced. We still only stick towards the better quality products. To us, the 3 products that we know and have used is Selectronic, which is Australian owned and made. Some would question that it's probably the best inverter on the market for what it was, and still is. And then you've got SIG Energy, which is a new player on the market. I've just installed some SIG Energy battery on my own house, so 100% backing up what I'm actually stating myself. And then the third one is Victron, which we use on specific sites. So it really comes down to, once again, as I've said throughout this process, each client's going to be he's going to have a different set of requirements. And depending on what that client wants to achieve, then depends on what solution that we offer.
Do you use the Power Plus batteries at all, or use them in the past?
So the Power Plus batteries we put with the Selectronic inverters most of the time. So Power Plus being Australian owned, not 100% sure if they're manufactured in Australia, are they?
I'm not sure.
Here, but
It's an Australian
but
company.
they're definitely reputable. We've installed probably about 8 to 10 systems, and it's good because there isn't anything else in that space. So there isn't really anything that's Australian made. So when you've got that level of support that can back up their products as well. So if you have a technical inquiry, you've got someone local that you can actually go to for support, and that goes a long way for us. If we don't have the support of the manufacturer, we're not going to recommend those products. And with all those products that I just mentioned, Selectronic, SIG, and Victron, they've all got that support backup for them.
Now, do you get customers sometimes that you've designed a system, you actually really believe that's the right size, and then they try to talk you into maybe, do I need maybe a bit smaller or something like that? I mean, do you get those discussions, and what's your feedback?
Generically, we don't get those sort of discussions because we've sort of educated the clients in the first place, and we may have given them an option of 1, 2 or 3. So we make sure that when someone says yes to the solar system and they've said yes in the first place, that they've got all the information available to them. So there's no real need for them to come back to us. Now, if they do, they've obviously got a good reason to do so. So if they're coming back for that reason, then there's no concerns. You've obviously got to take each case on a case by case. But it's not like a competitor's coming through and saying you only need this or you need this. To be honest, most of the time we actually are scaling the clients back from a 10 kilowatt system to closer to 6 because they've only got a bill of $200 a quarter or something, you know what I mean? Like there's no need to oversell something to somebody that doesn't just because they're trying to get an extra couple of dollars. We don't work on commissions for sales. So there's no advantageous reason for us to offer a system that doesn't need to be installed.
So you say get the right size instead of making it all about the profit.
Yeah, 100%. So, as I said, we do that by not incentivizing our sales team to actually go and sell a bigger system.
Right.
So there's not a lot of companies out there that don't, but we don't believe necessarily in that business model because you're not being genuine to the client that's in front of you. You've really got to take it on your case by case. You come to me, I'm going to look at your instances and say, okay, well, I'm going to pretend I'm the client. What would I do in this situation? And if you treat it like it's your own house and this is me, this is my own house, then you're always going to make the right decision.
You must sleep well at night.
Why wouldn't you? No, there's not a lot to being successful in business. One, you've got to have some business nows. And the second part is just looking after your customer. And if you look after them from day one, then you're going to get the extra referrals and you're going to get the extra support further down the path. And that's how our business model runs. That's what's been serving our purpose for a very long time now.
Now, with off-grid, you do have the full responsibility of that family's comfort in the design that you have recommended. Are there kind of common mistakes that you sometimes go and see in a system that's been installed and you go, oh, that's one undersized, wrong generator, no generator? What are the common mistakes?
Yeah, so going back a little while ago, the lead-acid batteries, you only got one opportunity. So if you installed the right system from day one, you were great. But if people wanted to upgrade their lead-acid batteries, they had to theoretically throw away their old battery set and install a new one. So back with the older technology, there was no way to upgrade to make things better than what they were.
Because there were different memory banks in those batteries. They had already been used, and you can't put a new one with a used one. Is that it?
That's 100% correct.
Right.
And if you did so, you risked either performance not being where it needed to be or excessive heat in those panels, which could have caused the panels to fault and or even worse. So we definitely stayed out of that. But that was one of the main ones back in the day, was there was no flexibility in the design. And that's where today, that's what you really want. You want the flexibility to say, well, okay, I'll put this inverter on today and this battery charger, but I can start with one battery and then I can modularly put a second and a third and a fourth in, and you can scale up accordingly. So all of our solutions are scalable, because we know that there needs to be that flexibility, because for what you want to serve today in your purpose may not be the same in 3 to 5 years' time. You might want a pool in 3 to 5 years' time. There's still no reason you can't put a pool in. It just depends on the size of the pool.
Even with an off-grid?
Yeah, 100%. It's more about designing the right system accordingly from day one. And because it's all scalable, you've got the ability to go up as you need to. And the main thing and the main concern, and what we really discuss quite a lot, is you can put a reasonable system in today and a reasonable size battery, but you just need to be aware that the larger the battery you install, the less you're going to be reliant on the generator. And the less battery you install from day one, the more reliant you're going to be on the generator. And that's the main thing that we probably put forward, because that's the additional cost. The cost of panels with the rebates doesn't cost a significant amount. The inverters are going to be a similar cost. So really, when it comes down to the battery, and it's a difference between spending $40,000 and $55,000, just as an example, it's the size of the batteries that's going to make that difference. But they know that they can add to that in the future.
So with batteries, if I get a bigger battery system overall, then I'm running my batteries a bit less hard. Wouldn't they then last a bit longer?
Yeah, so with batteries, the warranty on batteries is virtually calculated into the amount of kilowatt hours that have been used. So you might have the equivalent of 7,000 cycles. I'll just use that as an example. So a 10-year warranty, cycling it twice a day might give you a 7,000 cycles as a warranty. Now, if you're only using half of a cycle and I'm using a full cycle, then theoretically you're going to get twice as long out of your system, but you're still going to get the same amount of kilowatt hours as far as the expectations go.
Right.
So you do need to be aware, and some people will tell you this and some people won't, but any battery is still going to be very similar to your mobile phone. Eventually that capacity of that phone is going to scale itself down. So what might be 100% charged today on a brand new iPhone will only be 85% fully charged after 2 years. So these are the things that also have to be equated into the mix. But some people will talk to customers about that and others just won't mention it at all.
No, they'll mention it when the customer rings them 4 years later.
Or there's an issue and they say, no, that's fine. It's supposed to be like that.
But you didn't tell me at the beginning.
So...
You must be frustrated sometimes that actually Brad, I'm looking at Velocity Solar. I interview a lot of people about solar, and the ethics, the aftercare, the educating the customer properly, your level is right up there. But don't you sometimes get a bit frustrated when you walk in and you see the shysters have been here?
Well, I have a few sort of mottos that I run my business by. And one of them is you can't change what's in the past. And whether it's good or bad, you've still got to fix the solution. So we can't control what other people have or haven't installed. But we can still offer the right solution for that client moving forward. And we can't control things that are outside of our control, which is another one of our mottos. So we can't control if a shonky company is going to come through and offer X, Y, and Z. Okay, so getting frustrated about it or,
pulling your hair out
isn't actually going to accomplish anything. So for us, it's like, okay, well, what can we do now to make that journey for that client better? Whether they were our customer from day one or they weren't, that's where it is. And if a client doesn't go with us because we are that little bit more expensive, then we just accept that that's the way the world is. Not every client's going to be our clients. But we know that the level of the service, the quality and everything that we stand for goes a long way. And we know that we're going to get our fair share of solar systems. It's easier to work on a platform of plentiful rather than scarcity. There's no reason why you shouldn't be working with other solar companies rather than against them.
So basically, if you see me wanting to walk towards quicksand and you've told me it's quicksand, it's cheap solar, don't step in it, and I still stand in there, and now my hand is only reaching out, you would be still the guy to pull me out.
Yeah, pretty well, if you come to us. If you don't come to us, then I'm never going to know that you sank. But we accept that is going to occur.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, well, good to know. I hope not too many bits of quicksand around Geelong, but nice to know you're there for me. Thank you.
Yeah, well, look, we had a fun experience, not fun, but we had an experience a little while ago where we've gone to a random customer's house, and this usually happens with batteries. There's two that I can bring up in conversation. So first was they were sold a system online via the internet, and they were advised that they could self-install the system themselves. So they've gone and installed this system. It's never worked. We've come back in to look at it. The customer's out of pocket tens of thousands of dollars, but the system can't be connected to the grid because it was never done accurately. We found out that the actual installer was on a working visa. He had some sort of license to do electrical work in another country, and then just came here and randomly plopped the stuff together. That ended up going through Energy Safe Victoria. Went to court, and we were able to assist that client in actually at least getting some compensation back for it. We also did another job not that long ago where we went in and did a safety check of the solar system. So we just went to go and have a look at it for a rental property, because in Victoria all rental properties have to meet a minimum standards. So we went in and had a look at it, and he disconnected himself from the grid. This is the client. He'd then gone and bought himself a generator with a battery and a small DC converter to be able to create his own power. And then he ran extension leads through to the switchboard and then hooked up the power that way. And, there's no way in any shape or form that would have met requirements 20 years ago, never mind today. So he's now being forced to either reconnect the supply or to move out. So there's lots of dodgy systems out there, and unless you see them, you couldn't believe that that's actually the way people are trying to run.
Cost of living crisis, but you don't want to have kids around any of that.
No,
it's not a good bit. Now, we're seeing now new homes coming up, and a lot of people go right at the beginning, let's get solar, let's get the battery, let's do it all right. Do you do new home builds, and what's your recommendation?
Yeah, so a larger portion of our jobs now is moving towards new homes because of the star rating specifically in Victoria. The easiest way to comply with whole of home energy efficiency is to actually put solar systems on. So a 2 kilowatt solar system will give you a much higher whole of home energy rating than double glazing your windows, and it costs less. So it's becoming sort of more common and occurring that your larger builders, your bulk builders that you see day in, day out, are now moving towards offering small 2 kilowatt systems. We still don't believe that a 2 kilowatt system accomplishes too much. But some of the custom builders, we do a lot of work for custom builders. We don't necessarily go too far in towards the bulk builders because they're not offering the same level of service for the same price.
It's cheap solar all the way. It's just there to tick a box, and the outcome is usually not that high.
Yes, and that's what they did with the whole heat pump scenario when they forced people to do those as well. But we only really work with the custom builders that are offering decent solutions. So we've got a builder that we do work for that offers 6.5 kilowatts of solar with a Tesla inverter. So they're offering good practical solutions. So we stick more towards the custom side of things, but obviously we do a hell of a lot of pre-wiring of solar for clients. So it makes a lot more sense to install a battery and an inverter from day one if you get the ability to do so. Everything can be retrofitted later, but financially it just ticks a few more boxes to do it as an all-in-one solution. So,
I mean, the wiring and all that can be done much more neater if you come in early, isn't it?
Yeah, if it's a standard single story, you can pretty well hide the cables all day, every day. But as soon as you move into a double story or you've got a flat roof, that client would be forced to then go down the path of having to have external conduits, and it doesn't look as cosmetically appealing. And when you're doing work for custom builders, we're not talking about little dog boxes where they haven't paid much for their decent jobs. So you want to make sure you're offering a decent solution. I'd be surprised if we're not doing upwards of 2 pre-wires most weeks.
Now, if you get a new home nowadays, I would say go for solar and battery now.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, up until very recently, I was telling customers that, look, a battery might make sense, but what's the purpose? Are you doing it for blackout protection? Are you doing it for the principle of using your own power? Are you doing it for the environmental?
I hate the energy companies.
Well, that probably comes into a little bit of principle, doesn't it? So this is where, for years, I've been asking, what is the main purpose? And if it was just financial all by itself, then I can tell you the financial benefits, and it may or may not make sense for most clients. If there's a bit more for the principle of it, or the economical, and you can put a few together, it obviously makes a little bit more sense. So once again, we won't tell every customer that a battery makes sense for them, but for a large portion of clients, we honestly believe, and me specifically, that a battery does make sense. I was on a large feed-in tariff for many years when I installed my first system. That's now been removed, and I've gone and installed a solar system with a battery. So I 100% believe in it.
Can you explain for anybody who's watching this today why panel position is important? Because some people just plonk them on anywhere, but there's actually a logic about it, isn't it?
Yeah, panel placements also changed over the years. So when there was a premium feed-in tariff, the idea was to get as much solar production as possible during the day so you could get as much financial benefits. So facing everything purely towards the north was always the best solution. What's changing now is the cost of electricity in the afternoons, and this is why we're seeing peak rates of between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. now, is the most expensive portion of the day. So if you can put your solar panels in a way that you can still utilise a little bit of energy efficiency in the morning from the east, but then have a larger portion in the afternoon, then you're going to be negating your ability or desire to be using power in those timeframes. So you can financially get a greater result now from actually moving a larger portion of your panels towards the western side of your roof rather than having everything on what everybody used to believe was due north.
Right.
So there's definitely options in that space. But once again, you're then asking questions of yourself. Are you at home to use the power during the day? Are you at home at night to use the power of the day? When do you use your power? And they're going to be more relevant because you're not getting as much money for feeding it into the grid. So knowing the usage patterns of the client and then working through the energy rates and what they're planning on doing moving forward will determine what we can do. Because you might have multiple options available, but what is the best one for that specific client? And this is where we don't do the one size fits all.
Right. So if I've got kids coming all home from at 3 o'clock after school, I'd want a bit of panels pointing west.
Yeah, well, that sounds like my household.
Yeah.
So in my household, we're both out working, and in the afternoons, that's when we're going to get home and use most of our power. So if we can utilise that power in the afternoon when we're actually home to use it, that's great. And if you go down the path of batteries, you can actually store power during the day and then be able to utilise it or export it at a reasonable rate if you want to go down the path of a virtual power plant, which they call VPP, which allows for the energy to be purchased from the retailers back to you, and then you can financially actually get a greater reward for that.
Solar and the whole renewable has actually been a bit of a political football between the major parties. And so some people sit on the sideline and still wonder if solar actually can really save me money. You've done it for 15 years. Does solar save me money?
Yeah, so the interesting part with all the government intervention, all the rebates, all the bits and pieces that have been on over all the years, a solar system still should take approximately, and this is just an approximation, 5 to 7 years for an average solar system to be installed. So my first system cost me $25,000 if I had paid someone to do it. But I was making $3,500 back from the energy efficiency. Today, it might cost you $7,000, but you'll save $1,000 or $1,200 back. So the repayment time today is still exactly the same or very similar to what it has been for the last 12 to 15 years. So it's interesting how the government's had, intervened on many occasions with many different plans and this, it does still end up being relatively similar. And one of the logics I used to use is that, that's still going to give you a 12 to 15% return of investment. And if you're getting that, you're getting way better than, equities and shares and your superannuation funds. So to me, solar is definitely a no-brainer from a financial perspective.
Brad, I pretty well agreed with you all day today, but I would actually argue slightly that the payback has become better because the electricity prices just have increased so significantly. The gear has come a little bit cheaper. Yes, the rebates come down, but when I look at it all in the modelling, I do actually find that $1,200 is possibly a little bit conservative, and some people probably have benefits of $1,500 or $2,000 out of solar if they use it smartly during the day.
Yeah, so how it sort of works though is it depends on the client individually, because if you've only got a $1,200 bill, you're not going to get your bill down to zero.
That's true.
And you've got to be honest about that. So solar and batteries are always going to benefit those that use more power. So the unfortunate nature is the more power you use, the more solar is going to be beneficial for you. And if you can add the battery in at a reasonable cost, then that becomes viable too. So, and what you mentioned makes perfect sense, because back in the day, a battery didn't make us. So battery costs haven't really changed too much over the last 5 years. But the cost of what we were buying power for has gone from 15, 20 cents up to 35, 40. The cost that we get back has gone from 10 cents down to, in Victoria, as of July 1, the regulated amount is 0.04 cents. So even though the cost of batteries hasn't moved, the financial benefit of batteries has doubled over the last 2 years alone, because the amount that you're being charged versus you get back has doubled. So therefore the pricing. So it now becomes a lot more practical to install a battery. If you're going to add in on top of that the incentives from the government and the new announcements that have been made leading forward from the election, batteries are going to become very, very popular. 100%.
Now, talking about the new battery rebate that's just been proposed, and we don't know who is going to win the election and if that comes through, but let's put it in a theoretical. Should we one day have a battery rebate? What's the implication for end customers in terms of that boom that's inevitably going to follow and the shonks that are attracted to all rebates?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we already see this in the building industry right now today, and in general with heat pumps. So there's companies out there that'll offer a hot water heat pump for a client, and they might only spend $1,000 out of pocket because someone's offering them something small and cheap, and they're getting the financial benefit. But in 3 to 4 years' time, when that heat pump's already died, they can't claim the rebate again. And then they're going to want to go and buy something that was better than what they had in the first place. So it's easier to make sure that you're installing something of quality from day one rather than in the future. Now, at Velocity Solar, we will only install good quality batteries that we're going to back up for the life of the system, because you're not just our client today when we sell you the system. We're going to look after you indefinitely until you move out of that house. So we want to make sure that that battery that we install has the greatest capacity to still be working perfectly for years to come and offer that service that goes with it. So there's going to be a lot more cheaper systems on the market. There's going to be a lot of cheaper batteries on the market. But that's not going to concern us because they won't be our clients. The clients that want those systems will go to someone else and get those systems. We're more than comfortable to know that we'll get a greater portion of people that care about quality, service and reliability, and we're comfortable that they'll come to us.
But I mean, I also know that if you can demonstrate in the last 10 years your solar system made you $18,000 and it's still in a good nick, then when you sell the house, you also got an asset.
Yeah, so I used to compare it like two Fords or two Utes, and one of them had a $3,000 worth of extras and the other one didn't, but they've done the same Ks and everything else is the same. You're going to take the one with the extras. So it's a similar premise with a new house. If you're looking at two houses and they're both same but different, and the only difference is one's got a 6 kilowatt solar system or one's got a 6 kilowatt solar system with a battery, then that system's going to sell quicker. That house will sell quicker. And if you're lucky and you've got two people that want it, then you'll even get the financial benefit of doing so. So there is definitely an added benefit of having solar, and more so today because it's less common to also have the battery set with it. I can guarantee you if I walked into a house and said, oh, that house has already got solar and a battery, awesome. as opposed to not having one at all.
But got to be a good one, not the one that burns the house down.
Yeah. Well, I can answer the question to that one. Now, and the government's done a great job in that respect to the extent that they're still forcing them to put the ads out there. Unfortunately, it does create a lot more angst in the industry, and people still think because they see these ads on TV that there's issues with batteries. So it does have a double-edged sword. It's great that they're doing something to make sure that they rectify those concerns, but it's also having an impact on the psyche of some people to, thinking that batteries aren't safe. When you look at the numbers of, let's just use an example, BYD, they've got over 1 million in production. I don't think they've had one fire. Okay. And I don't even know of any that have taken place from a home energy system from the manufacturers that we use either. So it's not common at all.
When the government is potentially going with a solar battery rebate and now very, very cheap offers come about, is the after sale even more important with the battery than, let's say, a solar system?
Yeah, so with a solar system, everybody knows the components. So there's the inverter, there's the panels, the rails, and the electrical. When you're talking about a battery, the battery is a lot more expensive. So when you have at the moment, like from all of my years of doing this, I've probably replaced panels off a handful of houses. So 10, 20 houses because they were faulty. But I've probably replaced closer to 800 inverters. So if something goes wrong with your system at the moment, it's usually the inverter. And the inverter might cost anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500 to replace, just as a guide. Now, if a battery dies and that manufacturer is not around to support it, then you're going to have to try and put another battery in. But batteries don't cost $2,500. They cost a lot more than that, even subsidised. But you can only claim your subsidisation once. You're not going to be able to claim it both. So if you claim it and then you put an average system in and it doesn't last, you're either going to be set in a position where you just can't afford another battery, or you're going to spend more to get something that you should have got in the first place.
Because in the design of the battery rebate, if that one's coming through, you can only claim it once. So if you waste it on crappy product and then down the track there's no support because the manufacturer's left and the installer has gone into liquidation, you will, if you want a battery again, put your hand deep into your pocket.
Yeah, and there's obviously where we can, we will advise and educate people on the benefits of the right battery for the right place, and obviously spending the right amount of money to make sure you get quality. But we can't control what bulk builders are going to do. We can't control what clients are going to do. So we can only educate them as best as possible on what we would recommend and what we would put on our own house.
So let's say you see an end customer, you educate him, you say, look, go for quality, it will last a bit longer, actually quite a bit longer, therefore it'll make you another 15, 20, 30 grand extra money. They got it, but then they still go for the cheap and cheerful. Does it not frustrate the hell out of you?
Well, I'm obviously a more patient person than you are. As I said, we can't control things that are outside of my control.
Right.
And because I live by that motto, it keeps you sane. Because as a business owner, you don't want to be sitting there getting frustrated with people because it doesn't frustrate the other person.
No, dumb people.
The other person doesn't know anything about it.
No, dumb people are usually the happiest people, I have to say, because they don't even realize what they did was a mistake.
Yeah. So, but it's amazing how much support and feedback you do get if you do go and resolve something for those clients in the future.
Have you walked into a client who had a bit of a hickle and a pickle when it comes to solar? It had nothing to do with you. You never installed it. It wasn't your fault, and you still bailed them out?
I'd probably say we do that at least 6 times a year.
Like, give me a sample.
An example is we go to a client's house and they're just not sure that their systems ever work from day one. There's just something not right. Okay. And then you turn up to the site and it's been a couple of years, but they're just like something in the back of their head, something's just not quite right.
Yeah, because I'm still getting $1,000 bill.
Yeah, it's like, hang on, I installed this, it should be X. Now, whether they've overstated what they should be saving is a different question. But we'll go and have a look at the job. We'll check the voltages and the current just to make sure that it's working. And you're like, okay, something isn't quite right. So you jump up there and it could be something as simple as they just never connected the MC4s, which is the connections on the panels. They haven't connected them, so it's only half been working. But then when you start looking on the roof, you also found that they didn't run the cables through the roof accurately. They didn't they haven't actually put it in conduit correctly. They haven't done this, they haven't done that. And then you speak to the customer like, oh, I was wondering why I wasn't getting credits because they never connected to the grid. So when you add all of these things together, the clients like, and to be honest, they're like, well, you can go back to your installer and do something about it. And we actually find a lot of the time, so I don't want them back here. I don't want them to ever come back to my site again. Can you just fix it? And we can, but it's obviously costs a little bit more money because you've now got to bring it up to today's standards. You've now got to do this and do this to tick the boxes. So it's a good service to offer, but we preferably don't want to find too many of those. But we are the company in Geelong that's sort of known to go to.
My God, because many other solar installers would just look at it and go, it's not up to the standard, corners cut, bits and pieces in walls that I can't even see, and I don't know how good or bad it is. And they would just say to the customer, look, you made a mistake to pick that initial installer, and I would recommend to rip it off.
Yeah, and we actually do find that quite a lot. So where we'll go to a job and the inverter's no good, and they're just like, well, what do we do in this space? Or we'll be doing a re-roof for a client. So they've had a tin roof and it's rusted through. So they're getting someone to replace it. Unfortunately, now in those situations where they've no fault of their own, other than the installer allowed it to go on a rusty roof in the first place, they end up replacing the roof. And for me to uninstall it, reinstall it, bring it, because you have to bring it up to today's standards nowadays in Victoria. You can't not. By the time you do all of this, you're up for X amount of money, whereas for an extra couple of $1,000, you might be able to get brand new warranties and brand new panels. So,
and you're also old
but you're
panels.
giving the options to the clients. You're not forcing them to make one or the other. And we've got some on principle that just want to use their own for environmental purposes. But unfortunately, the way that it's now designed, it actually will make more sense to almost install a brand new system.
Yeah, because you end up with old technologies in terms of the panels too.
But the main thing to know there, though, is it's the customer's choice. We give them the advice. They've been educated on what they can do, and then it's up to them to make the right decision.
Look, Brad, it's really been a pleasure to meet somebody where ethics and getting the right outcome is the number one consideration. So your philosophy of I do the right thing by the customer and word of mouth will get me the business, it's very refreshing. I really enjoyed it. And I'd say to you, if I'd anywhere love to live with solar, be Geelong, because I could have a really reliable backup to my system. Thank you so much.
No worries. Pleasure. Thank you.
We're here today with the latest podcast with Luke McKenzie from Velocity Solar, and Velocity Solar operates in the wider Geelong area. Welcome to our podcast, Luke.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So you basically are a local company. You're not having 15 branches all around the time and
Correct.
the place. You're stretching yourself. You're a local Geelong company.
Yes.
How far do you travel to install?
We do a bulk of our work around Geelong and surrounding areas, so mainly in Geelong, the Ballerine. We do a lot of work on the Surf Coast, but then we do travel Western Victoria a little bit, just into some of the smaller towns, just to give them some of the a local support that they require, rather than having to get someone from Melbourne come down.
So would we say, about 80, 120 Ks? What's the range around Geelong?
Geelong itself is probably, probably an 80K radius, or maybe slightly smaller around sort of the city, but we do go upwards of, potentially 100 to 200 kilometres to the west, down along the coast, just because there's not as many bigger companies to service those areas.
Right, got it. Now, your website highlights a whole range of services. So what does Velocity Solar offer?
We try to become a one-stop shop for electrifying your home in a way. We are growing, but we solely focus on solar, solar batteries, heat pumps, EV chargers. We have integrated a couple of cooktops and small split systems just for people who are really trying to electrify their whole home, but we do solely focus around trying to get people solar.
Now, in the olden days, it used to be just the solar, and then the batteries come to it. Yep. And now we also use the solar to heat the hot water.
Yes.
And then we can put it into heat pumps and pool pumps and so on and so forth. Do you see the whole thing still growing into other fields as well?
Yeah, I think as we get further into this, people are going to become more efficient with how they run their appliances. And while a heat pump's not a battery, it can be sort of classed as a battery in terms of grabbing some energy, storing it, heating the water. And people are doing that now with pools. I'm getting a lot of clients that are removing their pool matting off the roof and putting a heat pump in, so they've got more room for more solar. So that way they can grow and using EVs and whatnot as well as more storage.
Because basically your roof is now your footprint for your engine, that is the solar, isn't it? So the bigger roof, the bigger engine.
Correct, yeah.
And so you're finding that people are taking the old matted pool heating off to put solar in it, do they?
Yeah, because what they're finding is that it's not actually keeping the pool all that hot anyway. So, luxury item, they want warmer water to swim in, so they get a heat pump in to get the warmer water, but then they just put extra solar on to run that. So it's a sort of getting it for free in a way, and plus a little bit more.
I noticed Velocity Solar uses a lot of the top class product, the RSC panel, the AECO panel, you use Tesla, you use the SIG Energy battery solution. Why do you actually guys pick the better gear?
It sounds pretty self-explanatory, but I suppose the better gear causes less headaches. And that sort of goes through for our clients. So what we want to be doing is creating a solution, because we're going to be here, in 10, 15, 20 years' time. So we want to be able to service those products, and we want to make sure that they're going to stand the test of time. So we just want to make sure that we're, giving great quality solutions along with the great quality service and education that we provide as well.
But that might mean your system could be $1,500 more, couldn't it?
Correct.
That's 1 year or 9 months extra solar savings. You say that if it lasts 10 years longer, but you're paying only 9 months extra time in the payback, that's actually a good mathematical equation?
Yeah. The way I try to explain it for a lot of my clients is a lot of people get focused on ROIs and how quickly something is going to return itself. But the reality is the people that are making these investments are actually going to be staying in their homes for 10, 15, 20, 25 plus years. So the reality of it in 1 or 2 extra years is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. You try to treat it as one investment that's actually going to stand the time that you're going to be in the property. And give you the better performance.
The other thing is the environmental elements, because if you take the cheap gear and you put it in the tip back again in 5 years' time, you really haven't done much abatement, have you?
Yeah, and it even can be something as simple as like REC, for example. They make a lead-free panel. It's thinking 25 years into the future, right? When that panel has to come off the roof. Is it going to be a little bit better to recycle? And hopefully, fingers crossed, we actually have better solutions in that time frame. But it's not the whole solution, but it's a step in the right direction.
So if I want to get solar, am I focusing more on the price or the system? What are the things I should look at?
From our point of view, like we're very big in education in terms of there are going to be clients that are probably a little bit more budget driven, and sometimes price is going to be a factor. But what we try to encourage is getting the biggest and best system that your budget allows and running with that, because at the end of the day, you're wanting a solution that is going to stand the test of time and I suppose set and forget in a way, because we don't want to have to be maintaining it all the time. You don't want to have us coming back around, and nor do we want to be coming back around at the end of the day. We love our customers, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they've got a solution that lasts.
I've got a new house now, and I'm thinking about the solar and the electricity bills. Would you say I should get solar only or solar and a battery?
It's a bit of a tricky question, but as time goes on, solar and battery is starting to make a lot more sense now that feed-in tariffs are becoming less. So for what they're giving back to us, and especially sort of in Geelong or Western Victoria, now that we've sort of got the emergency backstop and got a little bit more control, they don't actually want all this energy being fed back into their infrastructure. So being able to store it and use it yourself makes a bit more sense, and it is going to start to make more financial sense as they give us less and they start to charge us more. So like if you can and you can afford and it's within your budget, definitely solar and batteries makes a lot of sense, but solar is going to have a good return over time as well.
Somebody right now, should we get the battery rebates coming through?
Yeah.
Somebody right now would possibly think I was going solar only, but now I'm going to go solar and battery because there's a decent support coming through, isn't that?
Correct. Yeah. So this is going to be some pretty exciting times over the next couple of months as we sort of learn and have this potential new rebate. And I don't want to sort of say it's guaranteed, but I'm fingers crossed it sort of leans that way, because it's going to make a lot more sense for a lot more clients, and people that might not have been able to afford that initial upfront cost might be able to now.
Now, if I walk in as an end customer to Velocity Solar and I say, oh, here's my electricity, it's $1,200, how are you going to sit with me to explain to me how my savings are going to work?
Yeah, so this is a big topic that I'd have a lot of chats about this day in, day out. It is a lot of people that don't know much about solar initially think that the feed-in back into the grid is the bit that saves them money, because that's what displays on their power bill as this is your feed-in credit, this is the credit that you're getting for your solar. But what they're not actually seeing is their self-consumption, which is actually the most important part, right? So it's about educating everyone to go, okay, changing some daily habits. Let's run your dishwasher through the day. Let's run your aircon through the day if it's going to be a warm day. Run your pool pumps, heat pumps, and educating them to a point that it's what you use through the day. We're actually offsetting your 20, 30, 40 cents, whatever your peak rate is, rather than sending it back into the grid for 3.3 cents now, or what soon will be 0.4 of a cent. Not a lot. So yeah.
So basically what you're trying to explain to people is you've actually saved $15 that day because you ran your aircon, your washing machine, but it was never coming out of the grid.
Correct.
It actually came out of your solar.
Yeah.
From an environmental point of view, it's nice, guilt-free aircon, isn't it?
It is, yes. So it's always nice to explain that to people too.
Yeah, okay. Now the word self-consumption. Can you explain to me how I would use solar and, let's say, a battery smartly and maximise my self-consumption? Give me a typical day.
Typical day, like you try to use a lot of your high load items through the day while you've got peak production, especially if you've got a decent sized system. And that's where sort of we come into play and making sure we've sized the system appropriately. To cover a lot of your higher peak items. So anything with the transfer of heat is a good way to look at it. So anything, your dishwasher, air cons, anything that goes from hot to cold, cold to hot, try to run that through the day if you can, of course, because that's going to be your higher drawing items. And then making sure that the system's also sized enough to fill and store the correct amount of storage. So that'll take into your evenings and look after your typical loads like your fridge, your freezer, TV, Wi-Fi, your cooktop and that sort of stuff that you're not going to be able to use necessarily through the day and cover your evenings.
So basically preheat or pre-cool your home.
Yeah.
And my wife will possibly say, set me onto the vacuum in the middle of the day.
Possibly, yeah.
Got it. All right. Now, we hear a lot about smart homes and EVs and vehicle to grid and solar. It's for a lot of people a little bit like, what's this all about? Can you try and explain this?
Yeah, I've been trying to explain it to myself for a little while now. I think it's going to be some exciting times ahead. I think South Australia's a little bit ahead of us here in Victoria. We'll get there eventually, the little nanny state that we are, but vehicle to grid, vehicle to home is going to be a cool integration, because people are potentially going to be able to drive their batteries to work and then come home and run their house with their car. Now, that we'd still obviously encourage to have your normal home storage, so it's more of a backup to your backup, but that might be a solution. And then there might be some integrations that with your household appliances.
So just hang on.
Yeah.
You're saying if there's a blackout in Geelong and I have an EV and it's a vehicle to grid EV that I have plugged into my house, my vehicle will support my house and then all the neighbours will be black and I'm still fine?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
But that's coming, or is it here now, or what?
I mean, the technology's here,
right?
Which is exciting. We just can't utilise it quite yet in Victoria. So, somewhere like South Australia is actually trialling it.
So the bureaucrats are holding it back at the moment?
Yeah, it's like the DNSPs here in Victoria, so your Powercore, your AusNets, your Geminas of the state aren't quite ready for that. But one step at a time, they've just done their emergency backstop. So one teething issue at a time, I think.
So you're saying that kind of technology, maybe within 12 and 15 months, we will actually have a vehicle to grid opportunity. What about the smart home? How's that kind of then communicating back and forwards with my car, or what?
Yeah, so that's where probably I'm a little bit in the dark.
I mean, we don't know what we don't know. Isn't that the famous saying?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But I mean, just enlighten me. I mean, what could we possibly get down the track? Just on the thinking cap thing.
Yeah, and it's just smart appliances within your home. I went and bought a washing machine a month and a half ago, and now it's got a full app integrated with it, and I can control it, and I've got extra settings and stuff that I can do from my phone. So
you're driving past your house, you see a lot of sun, you got the washing machine set up, and you go, oh, now I want you to run, baby, on the solar.
And it's as simple as your aircon. The aircon's very much the same. All right, turn on now, turn off X, pool pumps and everything. There's an application, a phone application for everything nowadays. So the integration is going to be seamless. It's just a matter of whether we can actually get it to talk to some of our solar equipment. That'll be the next game changer, is when we can go, hey, there's excess solar. And look, there is some appliances out there that do that, like Catch Power, that can actually say, hey, turn on, utilize me while I'm here, rather than sending it back into the grid for nothing. We might as well use it.
So basically the hot water heater is a big thing, isn't it? Because if you have your hot water heater integrated with your solar, then basically any excess solar, instead of sending it out, you can actually put it into your hot water system.
Yeah, correct.
Simply with a timer or various other appliances that are available, isn't it?
Yeah, correct.
So are you guys recommending that? Are you educating people about that?
Yeah, so we do encourage probably more of a heat pump sort of style, because they're typically a little bit more efficient to run on a day-to-day basis, so that the total energy consumption for the day is lower. And they have smart devices programmed into them, so we essentially say run through your solar operational hours, so between 10 and 2. But if you don't quite have the budget for something and putting a whole new heat pump in, it could be something as simple as putting in a timer that says turn on now, stop now. 10
o'clock to 2 o'clock or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And then there's other devices that will literally read that there is going to be extra solar left over that's going back out of the grid, and say, hey, actually go this way and turn this device on and heat it up until it's at its temperature before you start exporting.
Right. A lot of people are looking at EVs, thinking about it, not really sure about it.
Yeah.
If I buy an EV and I have a house, is a solar and battery really a lay down misère? I really should have it?
I personally think so, yes. It makes more sense, especially if you can be home during your charging timeframes. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky, is that you need to have an appropriate size system that's able to feed your home while also then charge the car afterwards. Because as we were just talking about before with the excess, a lot of EV chargers have a smart integration, and they'll be able to communicate with your solar and say, hey, feed the house first, anything left over, now I'm going to charge the car. So having an appropriate size system to do that's great. In terms of, and this is just my personal opinion, the car capacities are quite large in the battery storage. So we're talking 40, 60, upwards of 90 kilowatt hours in a car battery. The difference between sort of home storage, the typical home storage is only anywhere in between 10 and 16, maybe 20 kilowatt hours. So the math doesn't quite check out if you're trying to charge your car off your battery during the evenings. So what you want to be trying to do is obviously charge your car, hopefully, on the weekends if you work 9 to 5, or if you're lucky enough to work from home maybe 1 or 2 days a week, charge your car off the solar.
Right. But I mean, the advantage is also if you only drive relatively short distances of 60 or 80 Ks, then I could actually potentially have enough out of the battery.
Correct. Yeah, because you might only need to charge it once a week. And then you might get the opportunity to do that on the weekend.
Yeah. I mean, if you're able in your particular circumstances to get most of your EV driving through your solar, then you basically save over $2,000 in petrol.
Correct. Yeah.
Not a bad deal. What battery brands do you recommend and why?
We've done a lot of research, as you can imagine. We've probably done. We sort of hand selected 3 battery brands that we run with day to day. Tesla. I know that's not probably the most popular name at the moment, but in terms of if I was just looking at the product itself, for a lot of single phase homes that are putting on 10 plus kilowatts, it actually makes a lot of sense in terms of cost for what you're actually getting out of the product and the performance of the system. And then we've got something like SIG Energy, which is very flexible, got a lot of options in terms of integration with your EVs down the track. It's got to have a bidirectional charger that you can add at a later stage. Really quite modular in terms of the stacking of the storage, so you can sort of start smaller and build on it later if you require to. And then the other and third last brand that we use is BYD, which is a good, strong, reliable brand that's been around for a long time, and it is quite backwards compatible with a lot of people that have Fronius as their inverter, which is normally our go-to string inverter that we use.
Right. Talk about string solution and inverter solution. What do you recommend?
Look, string inverters are getting better. If you sort of went back in the day, way back probably when yourself started in solar, Marcus, Enphase was probably far superior, or sort of, should I say, microinverters were far superior in terms of performance factors and dealing with shade and whatnot. But string inverters have come a long way, in my personal opinion. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't fix the shading issues, and nor does a microinverter, but sometimes in a design aspect, Enphase or microinverters have their pros, but for cost benefit and performance, I think string inverters are probably suitable for 90% of clients.
And which brands do you push?
Fronius is definitely our go-to inverter manufacturer, which is an Austrian manufactured inverter. It's a good European quality solution. And then SunGrow, which is a Chinese manufactured inverter.
Solid piece.
Yeah, it is. I think globally they move close to most in the world, if not the most, probably second most. So pretty hard to say no to that.
Right. What about if I have a lot of shade on my roof and I still want solar, and maybe one part of the roof is okay, but the rest not? What solution should I go with?
We probably would lean towards a brand called Enphase, which is a microinverter, as I've probably just mentioned a few times along the way. So it just means that each individual panel gets its own small individual inverter. So this means that when the shade is occurring on that particular panel, it's only affecting that section of system, rather than with a string solution, they are sort of linked to, in a way, like a set of fairy lights. So if you lose one or two, you are potentially bringing down a handful at the same time that might not be in that same shade.
Now with batteries and all that, are they safe nowadays?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So things have changed a lot over time, and dare I say that it was probably more to do with poor installation that caused a lot of these horror stories, not necessarily the product. Don't get me wrong, there's some products out there at the moment that have got some recalls on them and everyone sees them on the TV. But the reality of the situation, it's only a small percentage of what's actually installed out there and potentially the issues. So, look, we've now moved from lithium ion to lithium ion phosphate, which is a slightly better battery chemistry, slightly safer. And things like SIG Energy are forward thinking as well. Integrating a fire extinguisher into each one of the battery modules. So if it does exceed a certain thermal temperature, it is going to activate that.
So it just turns itself off.
Yeah.
Look, my personal opinion is that in the early days, some products came out that were possibly a bit too early.
Yeah.
But now the engineers have really pulled out a lot of the bugs. And for the number of systems we've installed, the number of incidents are literally negligible.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. And I think I was speaking to someone at Tesla a little while ago about sort of this same issue, and they mentioned to me that there was 750,000 Powerwall 2s installed worldwide.
Wow.
And not one of them was reported in a residential market to have caught fire.
That's a good math.
It's not bad numbers.
I don't think some petrol cars in garages got that same.
No, that's exactly right.
statistics.
So that sort of, eases me and it helps with a lot of clients that I speak to.
Right. I thought of solar, but now I'm thinking, battery rebate coming, I'll go solar and battery.
Yeah.
But now I have my budget. Do you offer finance?
Absolutely, we do, yeah. For a majority of our clients, it's not necessarily needed, but we do like to work in with companies that do help with green loans and make recommendations along the way. But in Victoria, we're lucky enough to have an interest-free loan up to $8,800 for people who want a battery, for example.
That's through the government rebate scheme, is it?
So for the Victorian government Solar Victoria program, as long as they meet their eligibility requirements, they potentially can take up to $8,800, which is sometimes just enough to bring down the initial out-of-pocket without having to get a interest-bearing. Even though green loans are great, they're still interest-bearing. So sometimes it's,
So this is actually a real interest-free loan, isn't it? Because just to warn people, and I'm sure if you agree, is they are marketing interest-free loans where they put the interest on top of the price in the first place, sell it as an interest-free loan, but you're actually still paying something.
Yeah, and if it's not the consumer that's paying for it, it's actually the company. So it's sort of not a...
And you got to make the money from somewhere, so you still, so you actually probably have to bump up the price a little bit.
Correct. Yeah, and we're not allowed to do it afterwards. Funnily enough, so we either cop it on the chin or we permanently put our prices up, which probably doesn't. It's a bit disingenuous from the start. So we try not to run sort of too many of those finance programs just because we just don't feel like it's the right solution, and we feel like we're a little bit disingenuous. So we just like to be as transparent as we possibly can and just recommend what we feel is the right solution for our clients.
But I mean, if the government does give you a genuine $8,000 up to in interest free, well, that's the one that I would pick first, even before my mortgage.
Yeah, well, it's $8,800 interest free, fee free, and you just pay it back over 4 years.
Can't knock the government on that one then.
No.
One of the things why batteries become a bit more interesting in the payback is because of VPPs. Can you kind of explain what a VPP is and what the potential benefits are?
Yeah, so a VPP is a virtual power plant for those who don't know. And it essentially just integrates a community of people that want to talk and work on sort of more wholesale pricing. So it means that you might be potentially able to fill your battery through the day with free power, and in peak demand times, the infrastructure or that program might want to buy your power back at actually a higher rate. So potentially you could sell it back at a really good rate and then charge it later in the evening or the next day at a really low rate, and you're sort of buying and selling at the right wholesale prices, which can inevitably either make you money or significantly shorten your return on investment on your solar and battery.
Because I mean, here when there's a lot of demand on power, then sometimes the price on the wholesale market can spike to maybe $10 a kilowatt hour.
Correct.
That you normally buy only for 35, 40 cents.
Yeah.
So if I send 10 kilowatt of my battery out, then theoretically I would make $100. Is that right?
Yeah, in a way, yes. So you've just got to be on it, and just got to be on the right program and understand sort of...
But I can't study what the wholesale market is. Is that automated?
A lot of the smart programs are.
Right. So I just go, I sign up to one of the programs. Is there a particular one you guys recommend?
We don't necessarily recommend any VPPs to people as of such.
Right.
Only because we can sort of say, hey, maybe have a look into places like Amber, for example, and there's a few others out there that do it, but probably Amber is probably I think they were probably the founding or the
very well known.
Yeah.
Yes. So you're saying if you buy a battery, there's extra money to be had if you do sign up to a VPP. Yes, they do get control of your battery, but you can actually, I think, control how much you want to keep yourself.
Yes.
Versus what you're sending out. So you always can keep your reserve. And I mean, in New South Wales, I've seen some people getting an extra $1,000 a year out of it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, there's some big numbers. Look, and I've actually had a couple of people that have gone out of their way to put more storage on. So just doing what you're saying there, select, all right, this is actually what I need for the home, but then I'm going to put on this extra storage to essentially, make use of the extra additional solar that I'm making on the roof.
Wow. Now, I heard that you guys have developed like a free pricing tool on your website, which is interesting. How does that work? Does it do also design or explain?
Yeah. So it just helps people get a bit of an understanding. So for people that are, I suppose, dipping their toe into solar and not quite sure, they don't necessarily want to pick up the phone and have someone try to sell them something, for example, because that's sort of a bit of a cliche within our industry. We've sort of developed something that you can jump on our website and run through, we've got a set of questions that it asks, and it will sort of spit out at the end a recommended system size and the potentially quality of product that might best suit you based on the questions that you've answered.
So basically, instead of having the door knocker or the, you don't strike me really as a very pushy sales guy. You're a bit more on the educational side of things, which I prefer because I want to be in charge and make the decision myself. But you say if they don't want you to come into the house first, if they want to explore themselves, Velocity Solar has a tool on their website where in your own time, you can play around with it and give you certain recommendations in regards to it. Does it give you price ranges as well?
Yeah, so if you want to be contacted by us, it'll give you a bit of an estimation of cost, and then we can obviously review that and make sure that it is the right solution for you. So if you want to reach out to us after that, we can then, book in a consultation to say, hey, yes, we would recommend that, or maybe we make a few tweaks based on asking a few more in-depth questions and just making sure it is the right solution.
Right. So look, I mean, I've interviewed quite a lot of solar companies. I've been in the industry for 20 years. What strikes me a little bit about Velocity is that you actually do give people a bespoke solution. You not kind of have a cut and paste thing and you're trying to talk to people into that's the size you need to do because you're only offering 3 sandwiches and that's it.
Yeah.
Am I getting that right, that a lot of your solutions would really be individually targeted?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's very much a key thing that we do is sitting down with our clients, asking questions, listening, and bespoke, like you said, bespoke is probably a really good word. Put a system together that best suits their needs and requirements. If that's Nana that only needs 3 kilowatts and no battery storage, then I'm not going to try and spruik a.
That's a 10 kilowatt system sale for you, mate.
Yeah, exactly. And I could probably get a few batteries on that one too. And but no, so we're very.
You don't do that.
No, God, no. We're very much a moral compass sort of first sort of company, and how we've driven that is we just try to get people on board that are with the same vision, that aren't trying to ram something down someone's throat for the sake of it. No. I used to sell cars for a living. I wasn't very good at it.
You were beaten by the bloke who knew how to do it sleazily, is it?
Yeah, it was, well, you're incentivized by pushing whatever was on the lot, I know you want blue, Marcus, but doesn't that red over there look great? No, so it's very much talking to the client and understanding what they want and making sure it's more of that education, like you said before, making sure they understand what they're buying and why they're buying it.
Right. Now, you've already convinced me that you're using good gear, the Seek Energy, the ICO, etc. But can you have good gear and still stuff it up in the install?
Absolutely, you can. Yep.
How can I? It's a box. I should screw it on. That should be fine. How can it be bad?
It's so important to have people that have got experience and know what they're doing. Because the way I like to sort of explain it is mechanics, right? There's a mechanic for everyone. There's the guy that does your car, but you wouldn't take your big Kenworth truck to that.
No, hang on. You give your XL, your old Hyundai XL that your mother-in-law drives to that bloke because you don't like your mother-in-law.
I love my mother-in-law. I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus. No, it's very much like it's everyone has their own specialty, right? And finding someone that has a niche in solar, because funnily enough, it's electrical, but it is its own little world. It's not so little anymore, but it's best to find someone that knows what they're doing and been doing it for years.
Now, do you guys have in-house staff or do you use subbies?
No, so we keep everyone in-house. And that's nothing against sort of subcontracting.
There can be good ones, but then there are others that you never see again.
We try to treat it as, and it's a peace of mind for our clients, that if something goes wrong, they've only got one throat to strangle. They can come back to us.
Why don't we change that and say they know where to go to get it fixed?
Oh well, it is a topic that and it's a line I use all the time, and it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people because they don't want to have to be chasing a subcontractor down the road because the bloke that sold it to him said it's his issue and then he says it's his issue, and it's a bit of a finger pointing game. It's just more of a peace of mind of, all right, Velocity Solar is great to deal with. They're going to be able to answer my questions, queries, fix my issues. Let's pick up the phone, speak to them. Okay, yeah, we've got a maintenance division to our business, so it means that we can get out and service and rectify these things quickly and efficiently, because we're not going to sit here and say we're perfect and nothing goes wrong. Because if I was to say that, I'd be absolutely lying through my teeth, and that's just not what we're about.
So something does go wrong, what happens after that?
So you just call us, and we've got the support there, and that's one of the reasons why you want to select someone like us that has got the in-house team, the years of experience, the ability to back up what we're selling, you know, not just a fly-by-nighter to sort of say, hey, buy this, and then, if you've got any issues, you know, find someone else to deal with it.
Look, I think I can get you a bit more salary if you would have some really cheap panels and cheap inverters, but make the customer believe it's good gear and then sell it with big margin. Why don't you go down that path?
That's just not who we are. And you know, we're as transparent as we possibly can be.
You seem to be nearly a bit offended with that suggestion.
A little bit, yeah. Making money sounds great, but at the end of the day, some of those things will actually come back to bite you in the end too. Because a lot of those cheaper equipment might have a higher fault rate, or the efficiency over time is, you know, not as good. So then at the end of the day, you know,
the system does look still nice, but it doesn't do much.
Correct. Yeah.
Got it. All right. Are there any interesting stories that ever happened to you in the industry?
There's been a lot of interesting stories, none that are coming to my mind straight away. But look, one of the stories I sort of utilise for people is sometimes understanding how your solar works. And then there's two parts to solar, in my opinion. There's the selling it and, the installing it, right? So the purchasing of solar is step one. Step two is very much learning how to use your solar.
Right.
I know that sounds really silly and self-explanatory that, my solar's on my roof and it produces power and it just does its thing and I don't actually need to do anything. No, you're right. You don't really need to do anything. But to get the most out of your solar system is looking at your monitoring for your system. So like monitoring is actually really important, you know, and being able to see how much power I'm producing, how much am I consuming, when am I consuming it, and learning and try to use or load shift your heavy load items into the times that you are producing. So that it sounds silly, but like everyone's system is going to be a little bit like a snowflake. It's never all, you know, you might have the same size system, same products, same equipment to Joe Blow down the road, but their house might be orientated a little bit different. It could be on a 2-story house, or it could be in a different suburb. The climate might be a little bit different. Everyone's system is just going to perform a little bit different. So it's just about educating people to go, okay, once your system's in, let's have a look at your monitoring. You know, if we need to organise a time after it's been done to set up and go through your numbers and go, okay, this is how to read it. And this is, are you using power, Mr. and Mrs. Smith? You're actually using a little bit of power in the mornings. What's actually that? I get my heater to turn on at X time, or my coffee machine's turning on at that time. Or is it something that you're doing that we could program to do later? So rather than paying for it, shifting it to the times that you're not paying for it.
Look, this is interesting. I mean, the way I always to explain it to him is that imagine you've got a tap in your kitchen, and from 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock, there's free water coming out of the tap. So have your shower in that time frame rather than have it at night. So move as much as you can in the middle of the day, and with timers and all that is possible now. But I would also argue that with the battery coming in, some of that discipline that you're trying to get into people, and we're all by nature a bit lazy. I have a big solar system. I still sometimes at night turn the washing machine on because I want that shirt in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
So my point is with batteries, some of that discipline is going to possibly disappear a little bit.
Absolutely. And that's sort of how we explain it to people. If you're less likely to change your habits, that's where batteries probably become a little bit more appealing, because you can be a little bit more flexible with your usage, because what you're obviously not consuming straight away through the day is obviously getting stored, and you're able to run your washing machine to get your shirt for tomorrow guilt-free.
So my recommendation really nowadays, if you go into solar, I would say for anybody other than somebody who's a really tight budget, try to stretch for the battery, because it is much more do it once, do it properly. The technology is there.
Yeah.
It's fully integrated, and you don't really have to think anymore, got to turn the coffee machine on at 9:30, not at 8 because the sun is up. I would say, yes, it's a bit more, but given how long they last and how much electricity is now, if you can stretch for it, I would say go for a battery.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably one of my blanket sort of rule of thumbs when people come in and say, Luke, how big of a system should I get and what should I do? My blanket recommendation is go as big as your budget allows you to. And the keywords there are budget, right? So it's all good and well just because your roof can fit, 30 kilowatts, Marcus?
35.
35, yeah. Sorry. Look, just because your roof might be able to fit that doesn't necessarily mean everyone's going to be able to afford that / they might not need it either. But the reason for that is just giving people, it's future-proofing it for growth. So while you might not need the extra, let's call it 3 or 4 kilowatts now, what about when you introduce your EV in 5 years' time? What about you go, oh, actually, I would love a split system in that back room. Let's run that. Or, hey, I want to put a spa in, want to put a pool in.
My 10-year-old is now a teenager.
Starting to use more hot water, starting to use more power in the house. Yeah. So it's just forward thinking and going, all right, what am I actually going to do in the house later? It's not just about covering what today is. Now, if you're at a point where you sort of go, oh, none of my habits are ever going to change, that's okay. That's fine. Well, then we'll design the system around what your needs and wants are. But if you are like most people, there is normal growth, and we're probably going to move away from a lot of gas appliances over time. A lot of people are holding on to their gas cooktops because cooking with gas is better. But eventually a lot of people are going to probably make the shift to induction and make a shift from your gas hot water to your heat pumps, and going full electric, and then having the extra solar up there makes more sense now because it's not cost effective to come back and do it later. And coming back to your point, if you can stretch and at least get maybe even potentially a small amount of storage in on something that is a little bit more modular like SIG Energy, and expand on it later, that makes sense because then you've sort of got your foot in the door with at least something, and then, or at least having a solution that's easily retrofittable with batteries that's set up to be the right solution later. And SIG Energy just keeps coming back and ticking that box. Because
you basically can go inverter and relatively small battery, and then your solar savings can contribute to buy the next lot.
Correct. Yeah, and then it becomes, all right, now I can actually start to afford and go. Or even sometimes people are a little bit hesitant and they're sort of, they love what you're saying, but they don't really believe how good it's going to be. Let's get in and get that first little bit of storage in, and then they go, oh, wow, yeah, this is actually good.
Have you had that where people said, oh, we should have gone bigger straight away?
All the time. Yeah. I always get the people that come back, and they go, and I'm actually a point in case of that. I put solar on our house that we had in 2019, and I ended up putting a 6 kilowatt system on, and it was essentially an all electric house. So the only thing I had that was gas was my hot water service, and it had a solar collector, and I barely paid anything for it anyway, but I had a 16 kilowatt ducted heating and cooling unit through the house. Yep. And I used to turn it on and off when I was hot and cold. I didn't put it in to not run it. And what I found is that 6 kilowatt system was probably okay during my spring and summer months when I was getting a fair bit of sun, and the feed-in tariffs were a little bit better than what they are now. But even so, I had the room to go up to just over a 10 kilowatt system on my roof, and I should have. For the extra small cost that it would have been at that particular time, it would have made so much more sense, and I would have been able to run the heater a little bit more frequently. I would have been able to run the aircon a little bit harder and not have to stress about what the bill was going to look like later. Don't get me wrong, my 6 kilowatt system was amazing, and it sold me on solar for the rest of my life, but I wish I had gone bigger.
So you made the rookie mistake yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, because it was the little out of pocket at the time, and I thought, yeah, no, that's right. That's what everyone's getting is 6 kilowatt system. But I was pretty new to solar at that point. I was probably only 12 months in before I sort of took the dive, and now I sit here 7 years later, feels like a lifetime ago, but now I'd probably do something similar to you, Marcus. If I had the roof space, you fill it and put the storage in.
Look, to let people know overall, if you go with end phase, for example, yes, you can upgrade the system because it's flexible with the panels
Correct.
and all that.
Yep.
But in some string inverter solutions, depending how many strings you get in and how many inputs you have on the inverter, sometimes you actually have to put another small system or another 6.6 next to it. You can't actually necessarily upgrade. So if technology or rules have changed, so my advice, just like yours, is do it once, do it properly, go as big as you can, because while the sales guys tell you it's like a Lego and you can put up, yes, that's true for some of the battery models like the SIG Energy, but when it comes to the panels, the models change all the time.
Models change, and then, things like voltages and currents change, which then doesn't integrate with the previous string, even if you did have the capacity to extend the string. It could be even something as silly as a regulation change that happens within the industry that might not allow us to do it, because you might go, it's 3 or 5 years down the track. Something so minor might happen that might just make the expansion of the system way more expensive than what it actually needed to be. Which is why, once again, for the sake of adding an extra, sometimes it's like, I can fit an extra 4 panels on the roof. Do it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You're not too far away from Melbourne.
No.
Which means you do get the kind of locusts of cheap solar flying in, door knocking or do whatever else, and make a great deal look even greater, and then disappear, never to be seen. Does that ever happen?
Look, I'm sure it does. We don't typically hear from too many of them. I think we've got a pretty good community around Geelong and surrounding areas that like to support local.
So what, if somebody from Melbourne knocks on the door, they close it on them?
Yeah, a lot of the time. Don't get me wrong, there's probably a lot of people out there that would go for that, but they were probably never going to contact someone like us in the first place.
Right.
So like for a lot of our clients that speak to us are very much, are you local? Yes. How long have you been here for? They've already been educated enough to ask the key right questions. So with that said, I'm sure there's a lot that gets around. But
do you ever get to systems like that have to be fixed?
Probably not as often as maybe what I would have thought. Yes, we do. There's some systems that we get to that we're never connected to the grid.
Solar doesn't work. I have a system for 5 years. It's doing nothing. Sorry, mate. It actually was never connected by the original company.
It's probably producing power to the house, but you're never getting any tariffs or feed-in credits or.
Oh my God! Really? You've seen that?
Yeah, seen it a couple of times.
How did the customer feel? Obviously, no monitoring.
Pretty hard done by. Yeah, but we're talking about systems that have been on their roofs for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and
oh my God, the money they
monitoring back then was a
luxury.
Yeah. Whereas now, sort of monitoring is almost a given and a definite recommendation, so we can help educate our clients to best utilise their investment.
I hear you've had the change in the feed-in tariff about 6 months ago. So where basically you had a smaller system, you were getting a really good feed-in tariff. So a lot of small systems, people did very well out of them because their feed-in tariff was 44 or something.
66 cents.
60.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, God, I should know my numbers.
Yeah.
So, but that's stopped now. So those people will get bill shock. What would be your advice to people who had that 60 cents feed-in tariff? It's stopped now. They still got a small system. Do you get people like that?
Yeah, we have. So that program was around for a long time, and they were sort of set into a contract. And sort of November last year in 2024, that all sort of come to an end. And we've actually had a number of clients that have sort of gotten their bills over the coming months, and from November to now, that still come back to us and say, not as once good as it was. And for the technology back when they were originally installed, it's probably almost time to take it off and replace it.
What I find a lot of times in the olden days, they whacked that 6 panels right in the middle, in the best spot in the roof. And if you want to put a new system on now, you kind of got to go all around it. So you got to move the thing anyway.
And the efficiency per square meter is a lot less efficient now. So like you were saying before, you're going to have to add, if you wanted to leave that there, which I've had a couple of customers do, because environmentally speaking, they don't want to pull it off the roof and have to put it in landfill or whatever. But a lot of the time, you're going to have to put a secondary inverter beside it, and then you're going to have more, I suppose, roof space taken up for less efficient space. So our normal recommendation would be, if you've got the budget to do so, is probably starting from scratch again.
I mean, those panels can now also be recycled.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, much better than what they used to be able to. So we actually have a solution now, which is good. But even so, like a company like ours, we try to hold on to a few common module sizes. So if people do come back to us that do have a system of a certain age, we might be able to give them a solution just to chop out one panel with this sort of.
Wow, you're special because not a lot of companies give that high of a service.
No. We understand that. Like we get a lot of customers that come back to us for maintenance that we've installed with some other company. But we just like to give that next level of service rather than having to say, oh, sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you're going to have to pull off your whole system and start again. It's just giving them a workaround because we understand that not everyone has the budget to just go, oh, okay, solar system's not working, I'm going to buy a whole new one and put a battery on and do that. We understand that, as much as that sounds nice, not everyone can afford to do that. But, better to at least get something, fixed, even if it might only be sort of a Band-Aid fix that gets them through for the next,
2-3 years.
2-3 years.
And they save up for a bigger system.
Correct, yeah.
That's a very nice attitude because I would say most of the solar companies will try so hard to get that old system off the roof rather than help anybody to make it still work. I mean, that is really a sign of great after-sales service.
Yeah, and that's really what we pride ourselves on. And don't get me wrong, like we're all in business to make money, but at the end of the day, we really try to focus around our community and supporting, our clients that we've sort of, we've now got, 15 years worth of customers under our belt and, we're only getting more and more and more as time goes on. We want to be able to just give that next level of service. So, Mr. and Miss Smith might say, oh, go have a chat with Luke at Velocity Solar. Like, he's just going to give you genuine advice about what you should do rather than, they were really just trying to push a 6.6 kilowatt system down my throat because that sounded great.
So go to Luke, even so he used to be a car salesman.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I say it all the time.
Listen, there are good car salesmen around. It was
new cars too, not used. By the way.
Okay. So look, I mean, I really love your attitude. I really love that you keep the customer in the focus.
Yeah.
And so I would actually, if I had a grandma living in Geelong, I'd send her to you.
As long as she has good cookies. Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
No comment.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That was Luke from Velocity Solar, guys. And I hope you share my thinking, which was that there is a lot of ethics. There's a lot of focus on quality and a lot of focus on good end customer outcomes. I love it.
Thanks,
Thank
Markus.
you.
Please support the channel by liking the video, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, and check out all our other videos. Want more energy answered? Visit yourenergyanswers.com for quality energy products, tools and calculators, and find your quality local installers. You're still here? I'll see you next time. Bye.